Hello, my name is James Conrad, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the CompTIA IT Fundamentals course. This is also known as the FC0-U61 course, whatever that means. But what I want to do here is to identify for you who would be interested in this course and what the IT Fundamentals course is all about. First of all, I did mention that it's a CompTIA course. What is that? CompTIA.org is the website, and it's an organization that helps people to learn more about IT in generally a non-vendor specific way. And that's also true of the IT fundamentals. In other words, when we say non-vendor specific, we mean they don't prefer Windows over the Mac OS or Linux, and they don't prefer a specific brand of hardware over another one. They kind of give equal footing to all of them, and you don't have to specifically specialize in one of those for this kind of course. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here, though, at who would be interested in this course. CompTIA says an advanced end user would be interested in this course, although I will say that if you're not considered to be an advanced end user, I think you can still benefit from this course. And I start things from a basic level, so I think you'll be just fine if you want to stick with it. Also, who would be an advanced end user? Well, one way to think about that is someone who can generally troubleshoot, at least on a basic level, their own computers. They can operate their own computers fine. And very often, if you work in a cubicle farm anyway, your name is the one that's called when someone can't figure out how to work their computer. Or, hey, they'll say, hey, Joe, my computer crashed again. What should I do? Or why can't I get this application to start? That sort of thing. So that might be you. You might be that advanced end user that people always come to. Also, people that would be considering a career in IT. Now, it doesn't mean that you've decided to start a career in IT. It just means that you're thinking about it. You might have been doing other things. Before I started my career in IT, close to 30 years ago, I was doing a lot of other things. I was buffing floors. I was doing janitorial work. I was working in a warehouse. I was doing all kinds of things. And I did all those kinds of tasks because I was an English major in college, and we're not particularly known to be good income generators. But anyway, that's one of the majors I had. So anyway, you might be considering a career in IT because you want to change careers. You might have already been doing something else. Might have been pouring concrete for the last 15 years, and you're kind of tired of it. Or you might be in a labor job where, geez, your back just can't take it anymore. So you might want to change the career. And here, you might also want more options. It might be that, yeah, you know how to work your iPad or your tablet. You know how to work your computer just fine. But there's not really enough options available for you because you don't have certifications of various types. There's many IT certifications out there. This is considered an entry-level certification. And for many jobs, if you don't have at least an entry level, there's no way for them to know that you know anything about computers or not. So if you work in a company right now, you might have already had job postings that came up that you said, oh man, I want that job. And then it says, oh, you have to be at least IT Fundamentals certified or A+ certified, which I'll cover here in a minute. So there might be certifications you just don't have, and therefore you don't qualify for the jobs that you want. Also, you might be in a job where you're simply in over your head, like this guy, okay? It might be a job where it involves computers a lot more than you thought it was going to. It involves IT terms and IT knowledge more than you thought it was going to, and you're really not quite sure what everybody's talking about all the time. You kind of nod your head and smile and try not to ask any dumb questions, what we would think would be dumb questions, but you're also a little behind. You just don't really feel a lot of confidence in where you are right now. So I'm here to help you with that as well. You might also be a manager. And sometimes in management, you're an expert at several things. Managing people, project management, budgeting. You might be a spreadsheet wizard with numbers and figures and all that sort of thing. But you don't really do IT per se. You might have an IT department that you might even help manage. But you don't really necessarily always understand all of the IT concepts that they're talking about, and it might be really helpful if you could understand more about it. And then you might also just want to personally have more IT independence. So if you're currently, every time your computer breaks or something doesn't work right, if you're always calling your spouse or your 12-year-old niece or your 12-year-old nephew or somebody else to come over and fix your computer, you might want to just say, you know what, I really would like to do some of this myself sometimes. Sometimes we get a little bit sheepish a little embarrassed about having to always call someone else over to fix our computers and the problems that we experience there. So yeah, it will help you with your competency there as well. Now, once you're done taking this course, you're also going to be able to perform the following items. First of all, configure and maintain a workstation's software and hardware. What's the software? It's the programs you operate. You know, the things you double click on your desktop or on your start menu or those sorts of things. It's the things that actually get things done. And then, of course, the hardware is actually the tangible items that you can touch. So if you're working with a desktop computer, for example, that's like a tower shape, something like that, you might be able to take the cover off then and identify all the various components that are in it. And that's a big part of this particular IT fundamentals, is to identify all those components. And this little graphic that just popped over behind my head here, if you can already identify several of those things, well, you have a little bit of a head start. On the other hand, if you can't identify really much of any of those things and really know what they are, that's okay too, because we're going to show you. Also, you should be able to identify and understand basic elements of software and database development. Now, that sounds a little bit intimidating right at the first. Why is that? Well, first of all, a lot of IT people don't even understand all the basic elements of software and database development. Sometimes their career path just doesn't go down that path. This is very often described as a programmer or a coder, something like that. But those would be people that do that full time. They might not work with a lot of the hardware components that we just discussed. They are actually creating software, creating apps for your phone, creating apps for your desktop computers and your iPads and so forth. Or they're working with databases where they control potentially massive amounts of information. Well, you don't have to be an expert in those things, but you should be able to identify some of the basic concepts of it. And don't be intimidated, because I'm going to show you how easy some of that can be. And it's a lot more in plain language than you might expect sometimes. Also, you're going to want to be able to configure network and internet connectivity. Everything's internet connected these days. Very rarely do we run into an environment where we don't have a corporation or even a department that's not internet connected. Sometimes for highest level security, there are some isolated incidents where machines are not connected to the internet at all, but that's very, very rare. So you'll need to know how to do that, and you need to know how to do that at home anyway, right? Because, you know, I know in my house, if the internet goes down, my family calls me and says, "Hey, Dad, why's the internet not working?" You know, or my wife calls me. So you need to know how to do that, as well as to interconnect a lot of these other devices, for example, to something like a corporate internet as well, or a corporate network. And this increasingly involves things such as Wi-Fi concepts or wireless internet. And you know that that's one of the most common complaints you get in any computing environment, is someone says, "Oh, the Wi-Fi is down. Oh, the internet's not working." Well, we're going to have to be able to know how to work with that a little bit. And also implement sound security practices. Wow, this is a huge issue these days, where hackers can come by and on your computer steal your credit card or your banking information, or hold it hostage with something called ransomware. This is even happening in large corporations, and it's costing millions of dollars, where they will encrypt your whole computer or parts of your computer, your data, and they will not decrypt it for you unless you pay them a lot of money. And this is kind of starting to run rampant as a security concern, and we should all be able to implement sound security practices to help avoid that from happening at all. Also, this is just an introduction. It's not the final destination, which kind of sounds like a bad movie, but really, this is something where in IT land, we really are curious people that are interested in IT. We're not trying to get to a certain point as the end goal. Usually, we want to continue to learn, and we learned something to this point. Now we want to learn a little bit more. We got this certification. Now we want a little bit more, another certification. It's very good for career advancement and just for our knowledge. And we're just kind of geared that way to continue to learn. So you can also consider further education after this course with other CompTIA certifications, such as the A+, and I would say that would be the next most logical step for you to go to. And that goes into much more detail with software and hardware. So after you're done with the A+ certification, you would be considered a technician or an expert technician with people's computers. Okay. Also, Network Plus, which would, just like it sounds, be very much more advanced in terms of the network and internet connectivity of the computer. And also, you could work with Security Plus, which again relates to security practices. and you would be considered pretty closer to a security expert there. That's a really big field, though. And it's also very profitable if you're interested in security. Also, there's the Linux Plus, and you might not be familiar with Linux. You've probably heard of the Windows operating system. Maybe you're running Windows 7 or Windows 10 right now. But you might not have heard of Linux. This is an operating system as well. In some ways, it's similar. Nowadays, it has a graphical user interface, such as a start menu, icons on the desktop. You can use your mouse to double-click on things and open up applications. And it's kind of similar in some ways, but it's also kind of its own product. Okay, so just another thing to look at. Linux can be used as both a desktop computer that you and I might use, for example, for daily productivity, but it's also used in server environments. And then you can also take a look at the Microsoft OS. I didn't really write it on here, but the Mac, it's supposed to be Mac, OS is also an important one to know about. But with Microsoft's OS, you might need to learn more about Microsoft's server products, depending on if you want to go into the server world, or just something like Windows 10. Windows 10 is Microsoft's last labeled operating system. Really, all they're going to continue to do it from this point forward is to update Windows 10. So that's the CompTIA IT Fundamentals course. Let's get started. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.